I start with is, this is probably going to be a little bit different than what you might have expected and from what you maybe have heard this morning. But I think what we're doing in the Upper Ottawa Valley is unique. We've talked about some of our approaches internationally, and there's a lot of interest to host a symposium like this on an international level next fall, and I'm trying to convince Service Coordination to be a partner in that, so we'll see how it goes. So part of our journey began, I think, when we had a conversation about trying to do too much for everybody and not enough for the right reasons and all those things. I'm going to put the brakes on this. So we started to look at our infrastructure and what we had and what was going wrong with it. And it was pretty clear that maintaining and continue to maintain group homes was part of our problem. I'm going to prove that in a minute. But I wanted to start with where we came from. So I took about a year into the organization. I've been there 5 years now. It was about a year after I started that we coordinated our first strategic plan that had probably been expired for 7 or 8 years. So I'm going to read the first 3 or 4 points because it's important. So in the early 90s, we closed our shelter workshops. We don't have a life skills program. We don't have any segregated services, and that happened in the 90s. But one of the things that they had still was some group homes, and they committed to close those, which they did. We reopened 3, and I've actually opened 1 in response to the Aging Families Initiative a few years back, closing a facilities initiative, and we've supported 9 people off the urgent caseload in the last 4 years. So we actually have opened 1 under my leadership, and I didn't want to do it, but the folks that were in crisis needed somewhere to go, and we were that agency. So we're going to talk about what we're doing next. We do not support segregated initiatives, and we're very aggressive in talking to agencies that continue to, and we are continuing to challenge private entrepreneurs who run group activities, et cetera, et cetera. We just don't believe it's true, and it's very dangerous in our opinion. I think everybody's aware of the charges that happened in Richmond Hill last year, and they're still in the court system. What we have to do is maintain a very high profile. So our organization is very active in public relations and marketing. We spend probably the equivalent of 1 full-time employee at least on advertisements, brochures, websites, going to events, et cetera, et cetera. So we were very active. We publish articles in a magazine that goes all across Renfrew County, and it's called Health Matters. And when people wonder why we're talking about health, well, if you talk about employment and health, it makes sense. If you talk about a good home to live in, you can relate it to health. Freedom from abuse and neglect, you can relate it to health. So we're in that magazine, 30,000 copies 4 times a year. It sits in doctors' offices, lawyers, hospitals, et cetera. So it's one of our commitments. One of the strategic plan goals is to reduce the ownership, clearly, of the stock that we have, and instead to provide resources to the community. So we want to help community partners. So the group that spoke this morning, Coach House, we would be doing everything we could if we could get that in Renfrew County. We're going to sell all of our group homes, so we're going to do that. We've sold 1. I'm going to talk about why we're doing that. And we're developing strong relationships with entrepreneurs throughout our county. You know, we have old homes. Oh, dear. We commit and have a philosophy of individualized support, so we're very committed to that. And we have lots of activities related to being out there and about. So our board vision is to create more affordable housing and provide partners that develop and work with partners to help address that need. We do not support segregated initiatives, and we're going to focus on inclusion and individualization. Now, for families that may be struggling with their current situation, that might sound like we're putting our hands up. I don't believe that's the case at all. We're working with you. I think our goal is to develop a shift in the community culture. So in Renfrew County, there are it's the largest county in the province, so it's difficult to get out and about, but we're doing our best, and it's part of why I said we're talking a lot about advertising, public relations, events. If I can't do it as an organizational leader internally, then I have to do something differently, and that's our effort to shift the culture in our communities. And I think that's a provincial campaign. Community Living Month is this month. We're very aggressive on the campaign about that. We're telling the story of what happened 60 years, because that's our 60th anniversary. And our first article was on Facebook about the institution in Orillia, and all the story now goes through the schools and the development of our organization. So we want to remind people that we've come a long way, but I'm telling you, we've got a heck of a long way to go. And we can't do it unless we shift the culture of our communities. And I know all of you are doing that, and some of our presenters this morning are clearly doing that. We are very proud to also say that we are an organization that holds high standards. So as much as I stand up here and talk about the work I've got to do and have to do yet, there's a commitment to quality. So we've been accredited 3 times, and we are the only organization in Canada to be accredited at the highest international level using CLUOV, personal outcome measures. And I wanted to maybe start by saying as well that everything I'm going to talk about and everything that you might need is on our website. There's some pamphlets in the registration desk that I forgot to pass out this morning. I was driving around in circles to get here. So you're welcome to it, but everything's going to be available on a folder on our website, so you can definitely take it, and if you need to, feel free to give me a call anytime. We've got the attention, I think, of some people that are interested in what we're doing. The minister was there last year, and in her luncheon speech, they talked about us being a model for other organizations, and I've seen some of the agencies talk to us since that day. We've got lots going on, and I think there's going to be some interesting questions when I'm done this presentation, because of this stuff. When I went to Pembroke, a month after I got there, I took 20 of my staff to lunch for 3 hours. And then I had another week later, another 20 staff. And I asked them to tell me, and this is not, I didn't want to put it up there to offend anybody, but I said, what do we do that's dumb? If it's dumb, it's not our agency policy. Going forward, it's not going to be here if it's dumb. And we started to shift the culture. So I have a group of, 13 to 15 staff that are appointed by their managers to shift internal agency culture. We meet 4 times a year. It's me and them, and we just shoot the breeze and talk about issues that are related to our service, to our work that we do that's not working, and we try and fix it. We've got a collective agreement, so there's some issues that way. But something bothered me last year when I was at an Ottawa presentation with the ministry. And when you think of what do we do, that's, finish the sentence. Does that make sense? You are all waiting for some support. And last year in the East region, the big East region, I imagine, we spent $6 million on giving people new services. 7.6 on fixing properties, group homes primarily, fire code. 2 people in a house can't evacuate. You need a second overnight sleep staff. You need all the rigmarole that goes with that. It's, you need it for safety, but you don't need it if you don't have a group home. So my argument is, let's think about the shift to closing some of the group homes and what we can do with the money differently. So in my agency, we spend easily $60,000 a year for each of our group homes. I've got that data for this last year, but I did the work for 5 years. Of that, some of it's not ever going to go away because it's supervision, it's an allocation of staff time from admin. But snow shoveling costs us a fortune. Lawn cutting, cleaning the bloody pine needles out of the roof 3 times a year almost. Those all add up, and it's taking money out of the pockets of people who need it, the folks that are on the wait list. So we're thinking, if we didn't have some of those group homes, we can easily free up between $20,000 and $30,000, support people to move, and if they can't afford where they're moving to, help them pay the rent. So we've created an internal rent supplement line, pooled resource. Our fundraising every year goes into that pot. So we know how much we generate every year. It's just, it goes into that pot, and people apply for it. So last year was really long and cold winter. People's heat and hydro bills were more than normal. We chipped in and helped them offset some of those costs. You know, a septic bed. Anybody have a septic bed? We had one. And they're a nightmare. It costs us a fortune every year. One of those properties we're selling is the one with the septic bed. Fire code, it's ridiculous. I have 2 staff that sleep in a bed all night long, get paid just because of the fire code. They don't need to be there. Our repairs and maintenance, roofs, furnaces, it just adds up. So if I've got $20,000 to $25,000 free and clear, let's think differently. People read the book, The Opposable Mind? It's an interesting concept. So we've got agencies, families, ministry, somewhere around or holding us both. But I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle, or somewhere differently than what we're currently looking at as a sector. $2.2, $2.5 billion in the developmental services sector. What can we do differently with that money? Is there a way to think differently? And I'm going to read this story because I pulled some of the quotes out of the book. We often don't know what to do with a fundamental opposing model. Our first impulse is usually to determine which is right, and by that process, the elimination of the opposite, which you think was wrong. Our sector needs to creatively resolve the tension between those 2 ideas by generating a new one that contains elements of the others, but is superior to both. So that's what I think, working towards, trying to find a solution that's different. So by forcing a choice between those 2 things, we disengage the opposable mind before it can create a reasonable solution. So if you think about that, you've got agency wait lists, organizational wait lists, costs that are exorbitant to keep places open. I'm thinking we're looking at this the wrong way. And so does my organization's board. And, I'm lucky to have a board that's very innovative, I guess, for lack of a better word. So you've heard some stories of this morning about different models. There's 2 good models I want to reference, and you may already know about these. One is in Peterborough called Casa d'Angelo. I was a director there for a few years before I came here, and we had a derelict group home, and we wanted to get rid of it. Ministry wouldn't let us sell it. We eventually did, and we took the capital. I'm just going to round numbers to 200 grand. And these 4 families said, well, if we could access that money, we'll buy what we want and pay the mortgage. So they bought something that was what they needed. So these 4 families grew up together as kids. The parents hung out and socialized together. So they're now in a house, and they staff it. So it's like a live-in family home model. So they're carrying the mortgage for $300,000. Since you're in Ottawa, you might know the MP from Peterborough is Peter Adams. He's their chairperson of that group, and he's helped fundraise. He wrote a book about it. So there's a lot of energy around thinking differently, and that's just an example. Snow Goose project in Elmira. They've got the current project is called Field of Dreams, where they're building a subdivision, a small subdivision, but it's all integrated. It's all 2 people in a 6-plex. But the Snow Goose project is where it started. They have 2 students who live in the center of this 4-plex. You walk in the front doors, there's an apartment on the right and the left, and then you go around the sides and there's a lower entrance to the 2 apartments below. But they only support 1 person, and that's from their agency. The rest are from you, maybe paying to have your son or daughter live there. Christian Horizons pays to have somebody live there. So it's not a group home per se, and it's different. And I think that's the kind of model of Roger Martin's mentality is, they partner with students, and this has been going on now 6 or 7 years. So they pay the students tuition, they live there, 2 of them, they commit to do so many hours a week, and they chip in, and the other agencies or the families support the people as they need it. You're all here, and we're all DS agencies primarily. Now, it was nice to see some developers and builders and that kind of mentality. We can't talk to each other anymore. We got to get out and talk to other people in their sandbox. Anybody disagree with that? You talk to yourselves a lot, I bet. You get together for coffee and you say the same thing. We got to talk to other people. We have to think opposite. I, as an organizational ED, I spend probably a third of my week talking to agencies that have no relevance to developmental services. And it's working. I'm going to show you why. So get out of your comfort as an agency. If you're an agency, get out of your comfort as families talking to each other. Obviously that has to happen, but get out and infiltrate other organizations and other sandboxes. So our strategic plan, it talks about that. It's right in there, developing partnerships. And I want to talk about what we did that helped us rock and roll. So 14, that seems like a long time ago. Out of desperation almost, I pulled together a provincial conference in Pembroke. And there was, I don't know, 130 or some odd there, and some of the names are on that list. David Remington was there for the entire day. I think David had just started here. But in the audience, there was 3 developers that we didn't know. They just came because they were interested. And we did a showcase of some of the things we were thinking about. And organizations such as Amira came and talked. The Affordable Housing Group from Peterborough came and talked. And it just started generating new ideas. Well, the developer that was in the audience, and some more that were also in there, bought one of our old group homes. That's an apartment. It was not a bad apartment. It looks like an old wartime house kind of thing, but there was actually a good design inside, but it just wasn't suitable for us. There was 4 people in it, and it was kind of a triplex inside, and then there was used to be the fire hall or fire station or ambulance station, so there was an attached building that was also an apartment. So there's 5 people lived in that property, and we just didn't want it. It was costing us. So he converted it into 6-plex. Good for him. He's an entrepreneur, very interested in our sector, and I don't know if he ended up showing up today, but he is interested, so I will be passing his name out to folks. So because of that, the folks that live there need to go somewhere else. So we have worked with him. He's got a landlord manager, and when there's a vacancy, and he has 500 apartments, buildings. I don't know how many units in all of it, but he has 500 of them. Most in Ottawa. He built the student housing in Pembroke. He bought and renovated the student housing in Peterborough at Fleming College. So he's an active gentleman. He's got properties in Windsor now. He wants to talk to you. So what I did with him in the first conversation was, tell me about your problem as a landlord. What is your biggest headache, and what is your loss ratio? And he said between 4% and 6% and the mess afterwards. So I said, well, that's kind of a waste of money, isn't it? He goes, yeah, it's just the cost of doing business, he said. I said, what if I could guarantee you no loss, no turnover? And his ears perked up, obviously. So our arrangement with him and others now is, if somebody moves out, we will pay the rent until we find somebody to move back in, as long as you dedicate those units to us. So he's renovating a big building. He's paying $2.5 million to renovate a 3rd floor, taking out 2 apartments to put elevators in it, and 3 of those apartments in a building now that's going to have 44, 46 units. We're going to have 3 dedicated to people with disabilities. And he's customizing them based on what we think we need, and we'll probably get some experts in there to say, what's a universal design look like, and throw that in there. Have anybody in the room ever been to a age-friendly community planning consultation? I hadn't either, but I went to one. So that's another sandbox. We have people that are obviously aging in our clientele, and we went to a 2-day workshop, facilitated all day long with a lot of people that had white hair. And they were worried about what the community is going to do in the future and how we can make it better so more people can be kept in their community versus long-term care facilities. So we went for 2 days, talked with lots of people, and in the audience was the CEO of a housing project, the municipal councillor from that community, and in about a year and a half to 2 years, they were opening up an affordable housing project for seniors. We've got 2 dedicated apartments in there. We signed a 10-year lease agreement with community living, but the clientele that move into it, they have to sign their own tenant. But they're going to dedicate that to us. The other builder in that house, in that symposium, changed his entire portfolio of what he was building. He's just throwing up two-story houses and selling them. He now builds only visitable homes. So the ground floors are all visitable by anybody with any disability. And he's doing well. He had an apartment. He consulted with our team and some of the folks we support on what they want in a house. And he's gutted that place right to the outside studs, redone it, and now we have somebody that uses that property. And again, it's just by hosting an event, and they're in the audience. They're not originally in it because they're nice people. They're in it for money, but they're developing a good relationship now, and I can guarantee you they'll help some of you in this room if we get them into the audience. We don't want ownership. $60,000 a year, 25, all the time going into repairs and maintenance. And people don't want it. We use an outcomes tool, and it measures 21 areas in a people's life. Our last year's data proved they don't want to live together. It's the lowest, one of the lowest 21, by an average, it's one of the lowest scores, below 20%. Nobody in group homes will say to you, I like everybody here and I want to stay. Guarantee you. So what are we doing about it? You know, our ministry last year helped out an organization in the West and gave them more money to build up a new group home as long as they took 2 more people into it. Now they have 6. I just think that's not right. And I'm going to continue to challenge that stuff. We supported people off the urgent list, as I said, that I didn't really wish to put in a home, but we did. But the home is now one of the first ones on our market to sell. It should be gone by June. Unfortunately, I can't play the audio of this because I didn't do the slide properly, but this is a local property management agency. So when I said that we do a lot of marketing, so one whole campaign was about housing. So this woman lives in a property, and if you talk to landlords, finding good tenants is their number one struggle, and then fixing the mess when they leave. So when they find a good tenant and a good partner, it makes sense. So the advertisement basically says that. They struggle with finding good tenants. We partner with community living. You should too. That was the message. And that played for a month on the radio. And as it was playing on the radio, it was simultaneously in the newspaper every time the newspaper came out. And it was on our digital sign. So we do a lot of, I guess, active engagement, transferring our message to people that we don't know yet. I think this is pretty creative in the sandbox. You see inspiring possibilities in the dirt there in the box. In the background, obviously, is a nice little condominium of some sort. But these are the people who were in that room that day. And politicians were there. I've met with every councillor in the county of Renfrew, every mayor. They know me by name. But the county of Renfrew is working towards, and this is really interesting, maybe Ottawa should consider it. There's a lot of money coming out across Canada for housing. Our county is considering, and I think it's just a matter of time, every RFP that goes out will have a 5% bonus if the contractor has engaged with and committed to support people from the developmental services sector or families that are connected to that group. So imagine if I'm going to throw in a bid for a $10 million 50-unit building, if I get 5% bonus, I'm going to win that contract 9 times out of 10. So it's not artificial. It's got to be right in the building proposal. It's right in the RFP. And I think that's just one of the ways. Think of the opposable mind. I've got an issue. He's going to get money. He wants the help. The solution was in the middle. If everybody in the country did that, we'd have a lot more people off the housing wait list. So talk to your local politicians. Also in that age-friendly community plan, in Ontario they recommend 10% accessible design in new construction if you're building a subdivision. We got them to convince up to 25%. And just by me and my other senior manager infiltrating everybody that was in that room. So the affordable housing project opened. 3 people moved in the last just about 2 weeks, so it's all fairly fresh. I'm going to show you a picture of one of them. Oops, too quick. So that actually doesn't look as nice as it's a very nice building. That back part there just doesn't look like it. It actually overlooks the Ottawa River in the ravine where the river comes right into the middle of Petawawa, so it's a pretty nice spot. And we influence their thinking, and we influence their agreement and partnership with us, and it wasn't that hard. One board meeting, a couple conversations, and they agreed. So these are the married couple that we support, and they moved in first of the month. And you can kind of see the river and what they would see now from their back window in their kitchen. They were living in a place that's nice, but it wasn't really suitable for her anymore. She's got some more mobility issues. So when they moved out, right around the end of March, we went in and gutted that place, and now it's more accessible for the next person that moves in. So we're keeping 5 duplexes, 4 of which are not necessarily 100% accessible, but pretty close. So we're keeping 5 duplexes, so no more than 2. The original plan was no more than 4. Now we're cutting that in half. So no more than 2 will live together. That's a partnership. So we annually do a Box of Possibilities fundraiser. We sell pre-boxed lunches in advance, and we make them and distribute them and drive them all over our county to businesses and factories, etc. So part of our commitment with them this year was they would help out and do it with us. And it's just a relationship that's starting. We're building raised gardens for them this spring, and again, it's just the start. It's going to, I'm sure, mature into a lot of really interesting things. But one of the other things that I haven't financially figured out yet is when we're done our closure of any one physical group home, because I had that fire code issue, there's 2 staff at night that slept. So when I don't have those, I think I've got 2 staff that are freed up. And what can I do with those staff? So I haven't gone through all the math, because they might need, because people are moving into their more individualized units, some of them might need a little bit more time and support. We're definitely looking into what Essex County showed. There's a group I met in the States last year. They run a whole state of overnight technology support for agencies. It's remarkable what I saw. So what do you bring to the sandbox? You probably haven't thought about that. So if I'm bringing conversation that's different to you, I think that's good. I think there's things you probably know now that, as of being here today, that are different. So take a look at what you can bring to Who's Sandbox and start getting in there and play a bit. So here's one of the homes that we're selling. Anybody want to buy them? They're beautiful. Just about an acre of land on both of them. The one on the left that's yellow there is a beautiful home. We're trying to talk to the Rotary House potentially as a partner in doing something with one of them, because they're potentially usable for folks who have high mobility medical care needs, and that hasn't transpired yet, but we've been talking for about a year now. So that could happen. So we have 9 properties. We're keeping 5, and there's 2 that we are keeping. And they both have side off the driveway to you can see on the left, the blue one. So that's an apartment. It's about 700, 800, maybe 900 square feet each. Single bedrooms, usually. Some of them have 2. It's well kept. 5 or 10? Okay. So I told the gentleman that introduced me, one of the interesting things in my career in Campbellford when I was hired, the gentleman that was my board